So you're going to do your 5 favorites, counting down from 5 to 1. 5 most fascinating defenses.
Yes.
What's define the word fascinating?
Fascinating. It's not the best. It's the ones that could kind of go one way or the other that I'm most curious about going into the season. So that's how I kind of defined it.
So would you say low basement, high ceiling, or just murky, amorphous, confusing, just all of that stuff?
Yeah, it mixes it all up. One is better than I think I have them higher than I think anyone else would have them. Another is if it goes one way, this team can win the Super Bowl. If it doesn't, it's going to look really bad. So I tried to mix it all together. You're vague enough with the description, and then you can go in any direction you want. That's my content style.
Number 5 is what?
I got the San Francisco 49ers, and here's why I put them there, because I think there's this revisionist history of what happened in the Super Bowl last year. Now we think about it, Patrick Mahomes was inevitable and the Niners couldn't stop them. Bill, if you look at that game, the first 9 drives the Chiefs had in that game, they had 6 points. They didn't have a touchdown. They had 2 field goals. Average NFL game, you only get 11 possessions. So for a big chunk of that game, the 49ers did their job. Now, ultimately, obviously, you gave Mahomes more chances, but a lot of that was on the 49ers offense for going 3 and out 3 straight times, and you give Mahomes the ball back. So I look at that 49ers defense from last year, and then I look at their actions where right after the Super Bowl, Shanahan's like, I'm firing this defensive coordinator. It's his fault. Steve Wilkes, he's out of there. And now he brings in Nick Sorensen, one of the new characters in our NFL lives for the 2024 season. Never before been a defensive coordinator, coming in, and you just kind of get the feeling like if Kyle Shanahan could call both the offense and the defense, he'd almost like a player coach. He'd be like, I want to do that. And you get the sense Sorensen, he's probably like, I got to just do whatever this guy says because he didn't like what the last guy was doing, and he's out of there. So I'm looking at the 49ers. Can they get back to the Super Bowl? I think the last team to do it was your Patriots, right? After they lose to the Eagles, they come back. Otherwise, every Super Bowl loser has not made it back this century. It's only been one. And so I'm looking at this defense. They've still got good players, but I'm looking at that coaching situation and everyone being a little more tense and the Super Bowl hangover stuff. And which way is that defense going to go? So that's why I've got them number 5.
They had a bad injury during that Super Bowl game.
Yeah.
Hargrave.
Greenlaw.
But Hargrave, we expect him to be bigger this year, right? They were slightly disappointed by him last year. It feels like a little bit of a comeback. Then Hufanga's coming back.
Yeah, and anytime you have a guy coming off an injury, when I'm looking at all these teams going into the season, I'm like, Sheil, don't just pencil them in to what they were previously, because sometimes it takes time. So yeah, they still have a good pass rush. They still have a lockdown corner in Charvarius Ward. They've still got the best linebacker in football in Fred Warner. So I still think they're going to be pretty good, but it's last year, the numbers didn't match the eye test with them. They got, their defense in the first couple rounds of the playoffs was bad. So that's one of the things I'm looking at with the Niners.
I do my dumb player rankings every year because it gives me a sense. I had them with 5, pink chippers, red chippers, or blue chippers on defense. Bosa, Hargrave, Armstead, Warner, and Ward. And that's not even knowing about Hufanga, whether he can get back to where he was. I mean, potentially that's over 50% of their defense. Plus, I know their schedule is not awesome this year would be the one reason to be a little worried about it. But I mean, from a talent standpoint, they still have the most talent in the league. The Super Bowl hangover is terrifying.
Yeah.
You just look at the evidence, and it's the same evidence against the Chiefs three-peat, right? It's like, hey, you know who's three-peated with the Super Bowl? Literally nobody. It's never happened. That has to mean something. We've had almost 60 Super Bowls at this point. So I think the same thing with the Super Bowl hangover. The only team that was able to shake it off had the best quarterback of all time. And by the way, scored 13 points in the Super Bowl game and somehow won anyway because Jared Goff just fell apart. So, all right, San Francisco 5. Who do you have it for?
The Chicago Bears. I don't know where you are with the Chicago Bears team, but all the hype right now is about Caleb Williams and the supporting cast, and I get it too. I'm watching the highlights and getting excited. I actually think their defense is going to be better than their offense, and I think they're going to make the playoffs because they have different ways to win games. This defense last year, they trade for Montez Sweat in the middle of the season. If you look at their numbers... Weird
trade, but they still have him.
Worked out. Yeah, weird trade, but it worked out. They signed him. Since they traded for him, they were a top 10 defense the rest of the season. Now, There's always going to be some noise there. It's a small sample, all that. But you look at it, they needed some pass rush. I think their corners, Bill, might be the best. It might be one of the stories of the season. They have this trio of young cornerbacks. Jalen Johnson, they signed in the offseason. I think he's like one of the most underrated players in the NFL. He's like a top 5 corner, got paid this last offseason. He was awesome last year. And then they've got 2 young corners right next to him. They've got 2 good linebackers. And so I wish they had a little more pass rush, but I was debating between the Bears and some other teams when I'm looking at who am I having in the wild card spot. And I kept looking at that defense going, this could really be a surprise unit this season. I've got them as a top 10 group. And I think we're going to be talking a lot about Caleb Williams and those receivers, but we're also going to be talking a lot about this Bears defense.
So give me the Eberflus piece of this.
Yeah, he doesn't run he's not someone who all the film nerds are going to be tweeting out, oh my gosh, look at this wrinkle by Matt Eberflus. He looks good. we all know he looks good this summer, but he's more of an old school line up, play fast. We don't need to trick them. Just, hit the quarterback, create turnovers, be sound in your fundamentals. So that's not always my favorite type of defensive coordinator because offenses are so good in 2024. But I feel like a lot of weeks, especially in their back 7, they're going to have a talent advantage over the opponents they're playing. And they're another team, pretty soft schedule. I think it's a bottom 7 or 8 schedule this season. So I think they're going to be able to beat up on a lot of bad teams.
Their over-under has not shifted on FanDuel this entire offseason. I was taken aback when I saw it in the spring. It was 8.5. I was like, wow, that's aggressive. Yeah. And then there was juice on it. The juice is now at minus 160, which is almost about as high as you can go before they're like, fuck it, we'll make it 9.5. But it seems like a lot of people are on them. And that's as grizzled old football fan / gambler, they just have a lot of buzz and a lot of smoke right now. And that always makes me nervous because, it's a rookie quarterback. They loaded up on this receiver system that once we get into cold weather, I'm not sure how that's going to work out. I'm not sure about Eberflus at all. And I think the conference is a little better than maybe people are giving it credit for. It seems to be this feeling that, how are we going to get to 7 NFC playoff teams? I'm a little more bullish on the NFC. Where do you stand? Are you bullish, less bullish, or dead even on NFC?
No, I'm the same way. I had 3 for that last wild card spot. I had 3 teams I was debating between, and I ended up going with the Bears because you and I have talked before. You got to get 6 new teams or around 6 new teams in the playoffs. You can't just go chalk. So I was debating between them and a couple other teams, the Cowboys, the Rams, and I'm like, I don't know. I think there's enough there.
The Cardinals are even in consideration for me. I feel like there's a bunch of teams in the NFC. I wouldn't be shocked if they went 9-8 and got the 7 seed. You only need to go 9-8 to get the 7 seed. Washington, it's not insane. I mean, it's crazy, but it's not insane. If Jaden Daniels is just really good right away, they might be pretty good.
Well, that's the other thing. Rookie quarterbacks. I feel like this time of year, we're like, oh my gosh, they got this guy. He's awesome. I looked at the last 10 years, and if you look at every rookie quarterback who started at least 10 games, on average, they perform like the 26th best starter in the NFL that rookie season. So we all look at CJ Stroud and we're like, oh my gosh, who's it going to be? Every CJ Stroud, there's a Bryce Young. And most of the time, it's going to be a tough rookie season for these quarterbacks. So that was my other hesitation with the Bears. As much as I like Caleb Williams and the supporting cast, it's like you should start with the baseline that on average, this guy's going to be the 26th best starter. All right, how much better than that do I think he can be? How much worse than that do I think he can be? And predicting these rookie quarterbacks, I mean, it's going to swing the season. And it's so hard to say because, I'm with you. If Jaden Daniels just puts the offense on his back and it's like a dual threat guy, they're going to be interesting. Caleb Williams might not, maybe he takes a lot of sacks and turns the ball over and it's not quite as good as the picture I'm painting here. So, that's the hardest thing to predict, I think, in the entire NFL every season.
Yeah, I have Washington, Arizona, and Chicago. I'm still trying to figure out who I want as the playoff teams, but I have those 3 near each other. And I think the difference is Chicago has the best defense, but Arizona might have a top 5 offense. You covered it in your piece earlier. They might just be really good offensively all season. And then Washington, the Daniels piece, the fact that he's older, the fact that he was so good last year, he checked some boxes for, I wouldn't be shocked if he came in right away. All right, let's get to number 3.
The Dallas Cowboys are number 3. And the Dallas Cowboys are always good for here's the reason why, because I think it's rare that your defensive coordinator leaves for a head coaching job and you end up upgrading at the spot. And I think that's what they've done. I think Mike Zimmer, we all made a lot of jokes about Mike Zimmer as a head coach. The overall tenure was okay for the Vikings, but he was kind of a funny character to have. As a defensive coach, I think he's like one of the best defensive minds of the last 20, 25 years in the NFL. If you look at those Vikings defenses, 8 seasons, he produced a top 10 defense 5 different times. And so I think he comes in with Micah Parsons, with the talent they have at cornerback. They've signed some veterans at defensive tackle. I actually think this Cowboys defense is going to be awesome. I think they're going to be a top 5 defense. I think they're going to take a step back on offense, but they're kind of going to be able to make up for a lot of that with Mike Zimmer. So that's one part of it, why I find them interesting. Now, the other part of it is, Buddy Ryan and Kevin Gilbride. Remember that clip when Buddy Ryan wanted to punch? Like, couldn't you just see Mike Zimmer being like, how is Mike McCarthy? What are you doing, this guy? And so he has to be held back on the sideline.
Angle. I like this.
His face is all red. Or, one of your favorite topics, Mike Zimmer, interim head coach, week 12. Who knows? It's all
looming.
Looming. It's all sort of in
like,
play
why were you talking with Jerry Jones in the parking lot? I saw you. Does Dallas have any linebackers?
You know what? No, but if you look around the NFL,
do they have none on the roster?
Honestly, you could say that about probably like 27 teams. It's crazy. Okay. When I was doing those rankings, there were like 5 teams where I'm like, oh, I like their linebackers. And every other team, I'm like, oh my gosh, these guys are going to get picked on every week. So yes, I did kind of surf past that. And it is a fair point to make. I
so badly wanted to zag with Dallas because everybody's out on them. I mean, it's just been the whole summer, and they're the opposite of a sexy pick. And you look at even from a fantasy standpoint, where it's basically like Dak and CeeDee Lamb and no other person you'd probably want to start in any week. Like, their running backs to come in as Zeke Elliott and Rico Dowdle is like, that's who you're going to start the season with. It's like, it's amazing. Like, they're just throwing away positions. They're throwing away running back. They're throwing away linebacker. And I don't really know what the objective is. And I know everybody's talked about Dallas for 6 months. I don't understand what they're doing. I don't understand the point of not extending Dak. I don't understand why the CeeDee Lamb thing took the whole year to figure out. Like, I just don't get it. And it almost seems like Jerry Jones is mad at the team. And he's like, fuck this. I've been so disappointed over and over again. Let's just start the season and I'll decide what to do then. It's bizarre.
Yeah, I've been hammering it all offseason that
I know.
They have mismanaged that roster. They're 32nd in cash spending in the NFL. So all the things we talk about with the cap, if you extend guys early, if you give them big signing bonuses, you get flexibility and you can improve your roster. They haven't done that. And then they look around and they cry, oh my God. No, it's not. The salary cap is an issue because you made it an issue. Other teams wouldn't have done that. They would have signed these guys early. So I think they deserve to get crushed for all their roster mismanagement. At the same time, I'm kind of with you. They've won 36 games the last 3 seasons. That's second in the NFL to the Chiefs. I'm talking about just the regular season. So I'm like, am I overthinking this? Because I don't have them in the playoffs. I have them 9-8, just out of the playoffs. But that's one where I know I could be looking stupid once we get to December.
Or it's the end of September and they're 0-4 or 1-3, and people are like, McCarthy on the hot seat. And you're like, oh, I should have guessed this. Of course, this was going to happen. Lame duck. Dallas is one of my watch out teams. I don't like it. I don't like zagging where everybody else is zagging with the same opinion. Yeah. I also don't really like that division that much. And it's like, somebody's got to win that division. If your stupid Eagles team gets goofy in the first couple weeks, who knows? All right, number 2.
Number 2 is the Green Bay Packers. Ooh. Bill, we have a new character in our lives who could determine what team gets to the NFC Championship or to the Super Bowl. His name is Jeff Hafley. He is the Packers' new defensive coordinator. He was the head coach at Boston College last season, Bill. His defense last year allowed 28 points per game, tied for 86th in college football. The year before, they allowed 30 points per game, 100th in all of college football. Not a great track record at Boston College. Now, we watch college football a little bit. We know that the players matter and maybe it's not on him, but can he give them an upgrade or not? Because this defense stunk last year. I mean, do you remember that Panthers game in like the last month of the season with Bryce Young? Yeah, he looked like Drew Brees.
I lost money on it. Of course, I remember it.
Yeah, I mean, Bryce Young carved him up. That's that was the only game all season, and that was against a Packers. They didn't do anything well. You look at the numbers. Couldn't defend deep passes. Couldn't defend the middle of the field. Couldn't defend screens. They sucked. At the same time, if I just pull up their depth chart, I can show you 7 former first-round picks on their roster. I can show you a safety, and Xavier McKinney, who they signed in the offseason, who I think is a great player, who's really going to help them. And so I look at the talent. I always talk about coaches. Can you do more with less? Joe Barry, their defensive coordinator, did less with more last season. And so if they can just be competent, if they can be like the 15th, 20th best defense in the NFL, I think this team can get to the Super Bowl out of the NFC. At the same time, I have no idea if Hafley's good. We could be having the same conversation next year where we're like, well, they fired Hafley and they brought in this new guy. Maybe he'll be good. So he's like this very interesting under the radar character in our lives that we're going to be talking about one way or another this season.
Well, my dad, who has followed BC football for a long time, not a fan of Jeff, just FYI. Yeah,
okay.
Was not a fan. Yeah. It was like, wow, BC, what's going on? Not great. Green Bay I have them in the playoffs, and I'll go this far because I bet both when I was in Massachusetts and I got to use FanDuel and I was just driving that thing like a Ferrari. I bet on Detroit to be the 1 seed at 5-1 odds, which I really liked and there's a whole case for Detroit, but I just like the odds. And the other team I really liked the odds for was the Packers.
Yeah.
And they were like, I think 10-1, something like that. But I think the number 1 seed is going to come out of that division is my working theory. Green Bay, yeah, I see it on paper, especially like if Love can match what he did that second half of the season. But there's also, that's another team that's getting a lot of smoke right now.
I know. I feel like I'm driving the hype train.
They were awesome in that playoff game. I thought they should have won. Like, I feel like that should matter. Like, they almost beat San Francisco. They came fucking close. That team's young. It should be on the rise. Their defensive coordinator sucked last year. So I see it. Yeah, it'd be interesting. All right, number 1. Let's hear it.
Number 1, I've got the Seattle Seahawks, which will surprise a lot of people.
I love it.
Every year when I do this exercise, I look and I say, who's going to be the surprise defense? There's going to be a team that jumps up from being terrible last year to top 5 this year. Last year, my guesses were the Cleveland Browns, good guess, and the Carolina Panthers, terrible guess. So I don't always hit on all of them.
The gamut.
I've got the Seahawks as my number 1 pick this year, and for a couple reasons. One is you just look at their defense the last 5 years. I think Pete Carroll was a great head coach. He couldn't figure it out. He tried to adapt. He tried different coordinators. He tried different personnel. Their defense was either mediocre or terrible every season. So now you bring in Mike Macdonald. And I hate buying all the way into the hype this time of year, but I can't find anyone to say a bad thing about the guy.
He did it last year.
He already did it.
Awesome. Right. And that Ravens defense was banged up. It wasn't like he had like the healthiest season ever. Like he was patching shit together. I thought he was incredible.
And by the way, that Ravens defense the year before he got there, now they were injured a lot. They ranked 28th in defensive DVOA, and then they were top 10 each of the past 2 years. So yes, he's shown this ability to turn things around. So I have a lot of faith in the coordinator. And then I look at the talent and I look at the depth chart and I'm like, he's been a good player before. He's been a good player before. Leonard Williams, Uchenna Nwosu, Draymond Jones, all these guys up front. Their first round picks a wild card. This guy, Byron Murphy, this defensive tackle with a lot of upside.
Who fell 8 spots probably further than he should have gone, right?
Yeah.
He fell to 16. That was crazy.
Exactly. And so Mike Macdonald, one of his special skills in Baltimore was he figured out a way to make all the pass rushers work together, or he would have these schemes where he would rush 4, but you didn't know which 4 were coming. Is it going to be a linebacker? Is it going to be a slot corner? Is it going to be a safety? So it's a lot of teams are doing this in the NFL where they're saying it's not a blitz like we're sending everyone at the quarterback. We're still sending 4, but if you don't know which 4 are coming and you don't block them, now all of a sudden we have 7 in coverage and we're able to defend you. He's a master at this. His play calling was awesome last year, and it was against good teams like the San Francisco 49ers. So I look at the mix there up front, and then in the secondary, Devon Witherspoon, big time player. Reek Woolen had a bad year, the corner last year, but was very good the year before. Like, there's just talent there. And so I think this is a defense that September, people might be laughing at me. Oh my gosh, I can't believe you had him as a top 5 defense. But by the time we get to like mid-October, November, I'm telling you, I think this defense is going to be playing really, really well. And it's a reason why I've got the Seahawks overs on everything. I mean, one of my favorite overs in the entire league, 7.5, I think is still the number, which I can't believe. I think they're making the playoffs. I think they're going to win 10 games. I think Mike McDonald's going to be coach of the year. I think it's going to be one of the stories of the season.
It's so funny because we have not talked about this. I have the most futures on Seattle of any team.
Mm-hmm.
The 7.5 was like an absolute outrage. I did the alt on FanDuel, which was like plus 148. That was like 8.5. I'm like, great. I think they're going to make the playoffs. I have them for the playoffs. I have a sprinkle of NFC West action. There's exact order bets you can do on FanDuel. So if you think Seattle's going to win the division, San Francisco is going to be second, Arizona third, Rams fourth, 25-1. Fun flyer. But I think the Murphy piece, just being able to get somebody that was clearly a top 10 guy, but everyone just went offense crazy this year, and you land that guy, you really needed somebody in the middle. I agree with you I love Pete Carroll, but I thought that he kind of lost his fastball the last couple of years. It happens. He's in his mid-70s, and the energy of McDonald, you combine it with the home field, which against the right type of team. But then look at their first 3. They're home for Denver, Bo Nix first start. They're at the Pats. I think the Pats are going to be the worst team in the league. Home Miami. They could be 3-0 heading into at Detroit on Monday. And then after that, I mean, they just have some crap teams on the schedule, right? They play the Giants. They got a Chicago game later. They get to play Arizona twice. We'll see if Arizona's going to be good. They got Minnesota at home. I think they can get to 10 wins.
Yeah.
And I'm with you on the defense. I think they have enough dudes on that defense that combined with their receivers, which would you put their receivers like that? It's like a top 7 receiving crew. Right?
Yeah, I would say so for sure. I mean, it all comes down to their offensive line, which it feels like we've been saying about the Seahawks for like a decade. But what I like is they can win in different ways. They could win. Their offense could be pretty good. Their defense could be pretty good. Like, I like to go through and say what teams could have a top 10 offense and a top 10 defense. Is like an exercise
Very
I do.
possible.
And yeah, I think it's possible with them. And the other thing, I think McDonald's game management is going to be awesome. Like in terms of saving timeouts, when to go for it on 4th down, when to go for 2, all those things that kind of the new school coaches are doing. I think he's going to be very good at that too. I think that's another area where he'll probably give him an edge over Carroll.
A lot of Kenneth Walker buzz too. Yeah. He's definitely going to go 2 rounds or $15 more than I think people are going to be prepared for in their fantasy league. Last thing with Seattle, the Geno piece. Mm-hmm. He's not bad. It's fine. You can win games. You can get to 9-10 wins with them. So I don't know. I like where they're sitting with the San Francisco Super Bowl hangover combined with brutal schedule again, combined with McCaffrey's already hurt. Ayuk's holding out. Trent Williams didn't practice all summer. Like, guys coming back from injuries that are key guys. It's like, oh yeah, pencil them in, but they still haven't totally come back yet. It just feels like they're a whiff vulnerable. I don't think they're going to go 6-11, but could you steal the division from them? It's possible.
Yeah. I've got a 1-game difference between the two. I've got the Niners 11-6 and the Seahawks 10-7. So I've got it probably a lot.
Yeah, and I might flip that. So we agree because you and I both believe in the new coach theory. And last year, even with Sean Payton, like he made a valiant effort to like to the bitter end. He somehow get to 7 wins with that shit team he had,
right?
8 wins.
They were 8-9.
So the ultimate candidates are McDonald, Harbaugh, or Raheem Morris. And then I guess you could maybe talk yourself into Dan Quinn just because Rivera and Bieniemy were so bad last year. But I guess those are the 4. But I think McDonald is the new coach guy this year.
He's probably the favorite. I'm looking at Harbaugh on that Chargers team.
Me too.
Way too much than I should. The roster, second easiest schedule in the NFL.
Yep.
The guy's won 70% of his games as an NFL coach, and then he went and he won a national championship in college. Like, I can't turn away at that. Herbert,
maybe we get 2.
Line could
maybe
be good.
We get 2 new coach bumps.
Yeah. I mean, that Chargers team, like by the end of that Staley run, was just a complete disaster. So yeah, I think those are far and away the two new coach theories, the Seahawks and the Chargers.
All right, Sheil Kapadia, you can read them on theringer.com. Listen to the Ringer NFL show, an awesome podcast. You're on there all the time. And then a little Philly special as well. Philly sports scene, not ever boring.
No.
Stuff happening all the time. Anyway, good to see you. Thanks for coming up.
Thanks for having me.